Move his microphone.
7197. Your
switch
views,
off.
our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, very warm welcome. This is Spectrum Radio 1. My name is Desmond. Good evening. On Spectrum tonight, challenges within the Ugandan immigration system. What efforts are being to make things better. Pardon me. A number of issues are emerging from the Immigration Department at the Ministry of Internal Affairs as the country struggles to close gaps currently existing in the immigration system. Government has gotten tough about illegal immigrants residing in Uganda and has also begun cracking down on immigrants who do not have work permits. The Immigration Department is leading this process. Government has also recalled all diplomatic passports following numerous reports that unscrupulous people are using them. This reportedly includes criminals. The key question many are asking: how on earth did this group acquire these passports, which have been found to be genuine? Could there be a syndicate at the Passport Control Office? Important to note also is the national identification process, which seeks to ensure that all Ugandans receive national identification cards. This program started early this year, but many Ugandans are still ignorant about what is happening and the processes involved. There is also the unending challenge of the porous borders that make the country insecure, taking into account the growing threat of terrorism as well as human and drug trafficking. For a country to have an effective immigration system, there is need for adequate facilitation in terms of manpower, resources, and modern technology. We ask tonight, what is the state of the Ugandan immigration system, taking into account the challenges at hand? So basically, we'll be looking at this and the related questions on Spectrum as we try to contribute to striving to improving our immigration system. Our guests tonight, Miss Eunice Kisembo, Head of the Legal and Public Relations Department. You're most welcome, Eunice.
Good evening, listeners.
We also have Mr. Marcellino Bwesigye, Coordinator of the National ID Project. You're most welcome, Marcellino.
Good evening, listeners.
Let me start with you, Eunice. Can you talk to us a little bit about who you are at that place, what you do in the Immigration Department?
I think let me start by correcting the title. I am not the head of the legal department.
Yes.
We have a commissioner who heads that. I am in charge of public relations, although I am a lawyer.
Right.
I've worked at the Directorate of Citizenship and Immigration Control for 15 years now. I've done legal work. I also manage the public relations function. But I'm basically an immigration officer, and at that level, I'm a senior immigration officer.
Senior immigration officer.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us about yourself, Mr.?
Okay, good evening, listeners. I'm called Bwesigye Marcellino. I come from the Directorate of Citizenship and Immigration Control. This is the department also charged with identifying citizens and aliens and issuing them identity cards. Identity cards will be for citizens and aliens after being identified. We set up a technical team in the Ministry of Internal Affairs as part of the wider government team which is going to work on this identification process, and I am the assistant team leader for the Ministry of Internal Affairs.
All right, that's Mr. Bwesigye. Can you begin by telling us a little bit about what's happening in that department, the latest news that you have from there?
Oh, well, thank you. Let me first explain this. Identity cards are instruments that are issued after people have been identified. But there is a process which to us we take to be more important, and that is creating a database. So we shall call this the National Identification Register. Now this is what is going to contain the characteristics of the identities of people. So the latest may be what our listeners are eager to hear. We already have an estimated 5.2 million data sets which were collected biometrically at the time we were registering the first-time voters in the last elections. So currently we have been carrying out tests on this data, and we are trying to establish the best way possible to handle this data so that we make national identity cards and we distribute them. Now on the 12th May we launched this this project by issuing the first national identity card to His Excellency the President, and a few other cards have been done. And we have also been carrying out a piloting process, as I've said, to really pilot the processes. What the plans we have, we want to test them. Because the end result is to issue 15 million cards. So you don't want to go massively without first testing your processes, the equipment, and then you make sure that once you start, you go full blast without any major glitches.
And when do we expect it to be completed?
Well, the beginning, as I've said, was at the time when we were registering people. Right now, as I've told you, we have been doing the piloting, and we are also consulting stakeholders, because you see, this is not something that concerns only one ministry. Ours sets up a nucleus identification register, but there is also the challenge of how do you continuously update it. Now, this may not necessarily fall within the mandate of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So there is also the Ministry of ICT, particularly NITAU, who are the IT advisors of government. Now, this is not necessarily an IT project, but it is heavily dependent on ICT. So we want to create a proper and efficient, well-coordinated government network that is going to set up a credible identification register to begin with, because this is the nucleus, and later on enlarge it, possibly to a data bank, and then so that once we start issuing cards, of course there is going to be a cutoff. The law prescribes 18 for obtaining the national identity card, but as you know, every day someone becomes 18.
That's true.
Every day someone dies. Every day someone is born.
Right.
So now what we're actually working on are the modalities of how do you carry out this process continuously once you start. So once we are through with that, I think we shall begin now. You are asking end. There is no end. This system, once it has started, is going to be there as long as the state of Uganda lives. So we can only tell you the starting date, the major milestones, but there is no end date inside.
Well, but you must have a threshold, a time, at a cut-off date when you expect that at least by this time we should have only those who turn 18 will not have cards.
Yeah, our earlier projection was that in 2 years' time we should have at least been able to register everybody. 2 years beginning March last year. And then we should have been able to issue at least 15 million national identity cards. Now, we have had a few delays here and there, but the project is on course. Now, after consulting the stakeholders, because in the process of consulting stakeholders, we realize that there will need to be changes. Then we shall put now new dates, and then we should be able to inform the public. I don't want to deceive the people, but I can tell them that the process is on course. We have had a few delays here and there, but we are doing everything possible. We want it to be all-inclusive, so that once we start it, it's really a credible system.
All right, Madam Eunice Kisembo, you are beginning on this project to issue national IDs, but there are porous issues. There are gaps in the passport system. We have diplomats and non-diplomats holding the same passports. How are you going to do this? How can you assure the people that this is going to be foolproof?
Let me start by discerning the first part. The passport issuance system will be heavily reliant on the ID system, because once Ugandans are identified, then the process becomes much easier, passport issuance. Then you're asking about diplomatic and... Well,
I mean, people are getting diplomatic passports when they're not supposed to. How can we be sure?
There's something we have to let the people know. Because I've been here at Spectrum and I've tried to explain, and we're continuing to explain to people. People are not getting diplomatic passports right now. People who don't deserve to hold diplomatic passports are not getting them right now. You see, what happened was, before 2004, there was a legal regime which had a broad category of persons who were eligible to hold diplomatic passports. And the law then, before 2004, even gave discretionary powers to the Minister of Internal Affairs to issue diplomatic passports to persons he deemed fit, and especially persons who were engaging in diplomatic missions on behalf of the country, provided that these people were citizens of Uganda. Now, after 2004, the passport regulations came into force, SI number 14 of 2004, and then the category of persons was narrowed down to, if I may mention, the presidency and his family, the government ministers and their spouses, foreign service officers and their spouses, and children below the age of 18, staying with them abroad, the head of public service, the chief justice, justices of the High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, chancellors and vice chancellors of public universities, the government of state universities, the governor and deputy governor, Bank of Uganda, recognized traditional or cultural leaders, speaker and deputy speaker of parliament, permanent secretaries, chairpersons and vice chairpersons of permanent commissions. Now, that, and of course the discretionary power of the minister to issue diplomatic passports was also taken away in 2004. So the category narrowed down. But that doesn't mean that those who got them before that time got them illegitimately. There was a legal process and there was a legal provision under which this was obtained. But what we are doing now, because the law has now become narrow, so the law has also gotten, must go proactive. We must have proactive provisions in the regulations requiring persons who no longer qualify under the current law to get the passports to return them. Now, the ministerial directive has been given to the implementing body, that is the directorate for which I work, and our duty now is to ensure that we have the recall mechanisms in place. But of course, this also involves stakeholders, because we've got to liaise with first of all, Office of the President. We've got to liaise with the judiciary. You've heard the judges are one of the beneficiaries. You have to liaise with the Parliament. You have to liaise with a number of stakeholders. So right now what we're doing is to ensure that the recall mechanism is streamlined in the law. But it's not like immigration is deliberately issuing diplomatic passports to wrong persons who don't deserve them. In fact, in 2007, we started the stringent implementation of the law, and we required every applicant for a passport to appear in person. And that
diplomatic passport, or every
applicant for a Uganda passport appears in person.
Yes.
And when that is done, the vetting process is enabled. Until we have the national IDs coming in, that is at least a more waterproof way of telling this is a Uganda citizen, because you're able to engage them, to interview them, to study their documents against the person. You know, you listen actively as you interview this person. So those are some of the things that we've done since 07. Although I saw in the papers the other day saying that the board had done nothing since 07. But it's not like we're sitting and deliberately issuing diplomatic passports to wrong persons.
You've clarified that.
Yes.
The innocent, not giving them out at random. But let's talk about the recall. Why do you have to talk to these people? Put a notice in the newspapers. Return our passports quickly.
You can't say that. You see, I've already pointed out that there are legal issues involved. Someone will tell you that they legitimately received this document. So you have...
You don't have to talk to them nicely or what?
It's not like talking to them nicely. You have to, first of all, empower the law. You have to empower the recall mechanism within the law. You have to streamline, entrench it there, so the recall mechanism is easier.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is, if the law says a person who is no longer holding, or a person who is holding a diplomatic passport but is not specified under the categories is required to return it, or a person who no longer holds the office which entitled him or her to hold a diplomatic passport will be required to return it, maybe within 1 month of relinquishing that position.
Okay.
Yes.
I would like to hear a little bit more about the passports and the issue. Let's talk, Mr. Bwesigye, let's talk a little bit more about the national ID project. What level of security will it have? Will it be the kind of card that one can get, from a street in Kampala, or is it going to be foolproof?
Well, no, obviously not. As I've told you, it's a process. The national identification, actually we call it the National Security Information System. Now, the security component is in two areas. Now, one, access to information. It has got to be, because people have concerns with their data, so the access to this information will be secured. And then secondly, the use of the system will be secured. Then when it comes to the identity cards that will be issued, these are very, very secure. Our service provider is a reputable company, security company, so they will have over 20 features of security which may not be easily forged. And maybe what we should say, these cards will be for 10 years, And we believe that was one of the reasons we suggested that it should be 10 years, because in 10 years people on the street might also become, come up severe. So they are very, very highly secured, but more importantly, they are backed up by what I told you is the National Identification Register. So if you try to forge it, we will again go back to the register and check, and if we find that it is not proper, then the law will take its course.
So if someone forged it and it looks like the real thing, they show up at a certain place, you punch in numbers and you find that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, the card is going to have what we call the National Identification Number. Now, this is also called a unique identifier.
Yes.
Actually, looking at this number, I can tell Mr. Edom, which is told that he's a man, where he's come from, where he's
by simply remembering the number.
By getting the number. Of course, they will be encrypted in a way. Now, we shall also, of course, for enforcement, we shall have card readers. So maybe the police, immigration officers, once they slide in this card,
swipe it.
Yeah, they should be able to tell, one, whether it is genuine, two, whether you are carrying the real card. Of course, the card has got a number of features. The picture itself, it is digital, and the card, as it is now, it has more than 4 features which have to do with identification. I've already told you the picture, it can identify you.
Yes.
I've told you the national identification number, it can identify you. Actually, getting to know your national identification number is good enough. We will know who you are. We are taking down all the 10 fingerprints. Now, all of them may not be on the card, but the one we have, we should be able to identify you. And then, of course, there is the demographic data, which can also identify you. And then, of course, there is the 2D barcode. So there are more details. Now on the card, there are about 8 or 9 fields that are shown.
Yes.
But in the 2D barcode, there is more information.
Yes.
So this card is going to be very, very secure. Some people have already had it, and the comments so far we are getting is that it is a good card and it is secure. So we are not worried at all that it's going to be easy forged.
Okay. Let's talk about the amount of information that's going to be on this card.
The amount of information, which way?
Well, name, address, what else?
Well, unfortunately, I did not come here with a sample, but we will have your names.
Yes.
The give is what we call a given name, then the surname, then your date of birth, the place of birth. Incidentally, these cards are also intended, among other issues, to be used for voting.
Yes.
So there will be your place of voting, there will be a fingerprint, there's going to be a serial number for the card. Now, I've had some people comment, those of you might have had the opportunity to look at His Excellency's card. There was a number 0001. Now, this was a serial number. Now, in the order of making these cards, this was now the first card. But that is not the number I'm talking about.
Right.
The other NIN number is also included. That's the more important one. And I think there is also the 2D barcode and the fingerprint. That's what I can remember. Now, the other features are real in the design. There is the coat of arms, there is the flag of Uganda, the different colors, the holograms. Those are very technical details.
Let's leave the technicals. Let's talk about the actual information, because there's been a complaint that we got a very cheap quality of card, which can take only a limited amount of information. In other countries, you'll find that they even have a blood group and other things, health information, insurance information, NSSF, and so on.
Yeah, thank you. This card, we started the process in 2008, and we did benchmark on other country systems. Now, what probably people need to be aware of is that holding this card is compulsory. Once you attain 18 within a specified period of time, I think it's less than 3 months, you must have a card. So the National Identification Program changes the paradigm. You see, people are used to going to apply for a passport, but this time the state has the obligation to identify you.
Right.
So when you look at the estimated 15 million people whom we will to give cards to, the majority don't even know how to read and write. So even when you look at the national infrastructure, we could have opted for the chipped card, but how many people really will make use of it? Even the banks we have, go to our police stations, go to our hospitals. So what we suggested, and which I think was a better alternative, is the system we procured can make chipped cards. So we will issue 2D barcode cards, which are very secure. They are ICAO compliant and they comply with all the international identification standards. But for those who might want a more sophisticated card, let's call it that, you will be free to come back and we make the chipped card for you so that you can probably contribute something. Now, a chip, inserting a chip in a card at that time was estimated to cost at least an extra €1. So if all two at most. So if you are going to incur another 60 million euros just to give chipped cards,
it might not make too much sense.
It doesn't make a lot of economic sense. So that was the consideration. Right. But let people rest assured that the equipment we have is very good. It can actually make different types of cards, including the chipped card. So when the need arises, when there is a critical mass of people who need it, and when we have the infrastructure, this same system will still be able to make the card.
You can upgrade without procuring.
Exactly.
Yes, I just wanted to add that there are opportunities in the National Identification Register for having this more data, and because the systems will be integrated. So it's not like the register, once the data is picked, it's cast in stone, that is it, it can't be upgraded. No. The Identification Register has opportunities for upgrading and having blood groups and all that, and because it will be serving several systems. Yeah, so it's, people shouldn't fear. It's not about the amount of information that the card can hold. It's about the accuracy of the identification register. That's what we should be focusing on.
And that's actually the scalability.
Yes.
You see, in creating this, what is referred to as a data bank, this is really an aggregation of different databases. Now, what probably many people haven't reckoned is that the identification database is the nucleus database. Because in this country, Mr. Kizito, if for example you won a big prize, I could come and claim I'm Mr. Kizito. So how do you tell between the true Kizito and the false one? So now that's what we are trying to determine. And as my colleague has intimated, we cannot afford any degree of inaccuracy. Because once you have wrong identified a person, it means any other data that you add on is going to be false. So that's why we have taken a little bit of time. We are engaging stakeholders and would like them to appreciate this fact that just like you are building a house, you might be wanting to build a 13-story building, but the foundation might be right. You can stop at the first fourth floor, this one, and then eventually you add on. So this nucleus, without this nucleus national identification database, you can't be able to build any data bank or even any other credible database.
Interesting. So you began off at the shallow end, like they would say, but you have the capacity to upgrade.
Exactly.
Very well.
Exactly.
Madam Sim, let's get back to the passports. Who qualifies for a diplomatic passport once again?
The presidency, the president and the presidency, his family, government ministers and their spouses, foreign service officers and their spouses, and children below the age of 18 living with them abroad in the countries within which they are accredited, the head of the public service, the chief justice, the justices of the High Court, the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court, chancellors and vice chancellors of state universities, the governor and deputy governor Bank of Uganda, recognized traditional or cultural leaders, the speaker and deputy speaker of parliament, permanent secretaries, and chairpersons and vice chairpersons of permanent commissions. Now these are the categories laid out by the law.
So it's not possible for the Minister of Internal Affairs to, it's not at his discretion anymore?
Right now he doesn't have the discretion under the
new law?
Yes.
It doesn't matter how much he likes me. He can't say go and get everyone.
No, it's not a matter of liking.
Really?
Yes.
Why did you do this?
Why did we do what?
Why did you change the rules? Why did you remove a diplomatic passport from some other people?
You know, every system improves with time, and every system is reformed according to need and reformed according to realities on the ground. Someone may be engaging in a diplomatic mission on behalf of Uganda, as it was then under the old law, and then that person then was entitled to a diplomatic passport. But then the diplomatic mission ends, has a lifespan. You get it? So it's not like you're engaging in it in perpetuity. Yes. So
tour of duty.
Yes, tour of duty. But again, that we looked at the integrity of the diplomatic passport. We looked at the Vienna Convention and the privileges under it, and those that go with the holding of a diplomatic passport, and decided to review the categories.
Narrow it a little bit.
To narrow it.
Give it more esteem.
Yes, give it, redeem the integrity of the document, redeem the integrity of Uganda as a nation abroad. Yes. Of course, we have had also problems because some of the holders, eligible holders, abuse the document. Now, you will appreciate that because you asked initially a question that why are criminals holding this? Mr. Kizito, even as we sit here, it's very difficult for you to know whether after I get out of these doors, I intend to commit a crime.
Right.
We don't have a criminolometer to tell.
You can't tell by looking at a man.
I can't tell, yes, by looking at a man and saying, I can't tell certain things about your body language.
Yes.
But your criminal intent in the mind, the mens rea, it has to be followed by an act in this country.
A diplomat is not synonymous with being a citizen.
Now, yes, and it's not synonymous. But also, being a diplomat or eligible for a passport holder is not also synonymous with being a criminal. Right. So it's either side. So the thing is, for us, our duty is to make sure we issue it under the law. And also, you have to know that these applications are routed through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now, it is up to Internal Affairs to advise Foreign Affairs and say, well, you made this recommendation under the categories of the law. This person doesn't qualify.
Oh.
Yes.
Or you look at him, you see the way he's wearing his jeans.
No, we look at the law.
Or you don't look at his tattered jeans.
We look at the law.
His hairstyle.
We look at the law.
He might come wearing dreadlocks and
people are free to express themselves. Freedom of expression is one of the cardinal freedoms in the Bill of Rights.
A diplomatic passport, would you do that?
If a dreadlocked man was your president today, would you respect him?
I won't go there. So this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Challenges within the Uganda immigration system. What efforts are being undertaken to make things better? Our guest, Miss Eunice Kisembo, Head of the Public Relations Department at the Immigration Department, Ministry of Internal Affairs, and Mr. Marcellino, Bwesigye, Coordinator of the National ID Project, an important project that Uganda has not had national IDs, other countries have, even in the region. Let's talk about the normal passport. What does it take to get one?
One needs to, first of all, because we don't have IDs at the moment, so we rely on verification of the local council executive level, LC1. So one gets Form A and Form B. Form A is the one that speaks about your biodata, and Form B talks about your history, your parental history. So you fill Form A, you fill Form B, you attach a covering letter either from your employer or from your locality of residence, or if it's a child, from the guardian. Then you take the forms to LCs, LC1, LC2, LC3. Then the RADC, the District Internal Security Officer. Then that you also pay in the bank. Yes.
How much money?
80,000, and
not
the bank.
100,000.
No, 80,000, and then the bank will charge you 2,000.
Yes.
Then after that's when we swing into action.
Right.
Actually, in immigration, it swings into action after you've brought your file.
Yes.
Duly completed with the payments, then we receive it. We verify your payments. Then we interview you on spot, and then request you to come back after 10 working days if you're eligible.
That's 2 weeks.
Yes.
And you get it.
Yes.
This is Spectrum on Radio, and we'll be back after the break.